Good afternoon, everyone. And I see that we are way behind schedule. So we will try and not come in between you and the lunch. So I would request my esteemed panelists to stick to about 5 minutes for their part. And I would also request them to first introduce themselves, say a few lines about who they are and what they are doing, and then come on to the subject proper. So I'll start with setting up some context, some background to the whole topic. Till now we have heard about the matter, and this panel is now about the antimatter. Now, according to 6W research, the Indian UAV market is projected to grow, as mentioned earlier, CAGR 18% in the next 5 years. It means that the pie is huge, and only 10 players or 100 players cannot finish off the pie. Hence, the need to collaborate, join hands, and that is where I would like to congratulate Drone Federation of India to have set up this platform to bring all stakeholders on a same page so that the communication language is same. And we are not talking Greek, Latin, English, or Hindi. The user and the manufacturer both are present together along with the regulator. Drones are going to play a very, very crucial role in all aspects of our economy, of our society, of our life in the coming years. It is the next disruptive technology that has happened. Also, we are generally viewing drones in the negative connotation because of the various incidents that have taken place. But the huge potential of drones for beneficial use has not been realized till now. Today, there are nearly 6 lakh drones which are present in India. And like the two-wheeler or a four-wheeler industry, there is a need to take account of the various assets which are present in our geographical boundary, so that the security concerns can then automatically be taken care of. We also need to look at regulation and the ecosystem which our stakeholders have been talking about. That needs to be taken care of so that this industry can grow, more players can come in, the entry barriers get reduced. Now, like the matter, the antimatter also becomes important. Hence, as we are slow in the matter side, so are we slow in the antimatter side as of now. We need to work on the regulations or the national counter-drone strategy, which is also, I'm told, in the offing, or it is being formulated. There is a need to integrate technology, that is, detect, identify, track, and neutralize, the 4 aspects of counter-drone strategy. And non-technological issues like awareness, safety processes, and regulatory mechanisms. We need to build a degree of assurance from all stakeholders to the regulator so that the processes become that much easier and less stringent. Today the processes are, somebody could call it as a draconian in nature. It is only because we are not willing as a user to look at security aspects. Next is the degree of assurance in the counter-drone field today is not more than 40 to 45%. This also is a feature which prevents the regulator from easing out the norms, rules, regulations. The next issue to be kept in mind is the cycle of obsolescence, which is based on emerging technology, and today it is just 2 years. By the time you design the counter-drone strategy, the guys have already moved on. Earlier it was GPS, today it is INS, next it is something else will come up. The regulation and the counter-drone strategy has to keep pace with the evolution of the technology. Now, most important element of counter-drone will be the central integration and command and control. Because software and hardware will keep changing faster and faster and faster. Multiple elements have to be integrated into this command and control setup. And because time is of critical importance in countering drones, it is just a matter of from sighting to action is not more than 5 minutes today. So we need to have a very shorter OODA loop, observe, orient, decide and act. And that can only come in when our entire ecosystem of drones is in place and all the stakeholders agree to it and they are following it very stringently. The users are not fully trained, they are rudimentarily trained. So the decision making becomes that much slower and hence the OODA loop becomes bigger and the rogue elements get a better chance to display their wherewithal. Solutions will range from technological measures like open and scalable architecture to integration with regulatory compliances like DigiSky or the National Air Defense Architecture. The regulations or restrictions are very stringent, especially in the terms of electronic emission, jammer use, kinetic solutions, and how the sovereign concerns be integrated into the solution which the industry will provide. Vis-a-vis covering the vulnerable areas, vulnerable points, whether it is government-owned or private, whether it is operated by CISF, local police, or the military forces. So there are too many stakeholders in this pie, and all have to come onto the common page. I would now request Augustine to take it forward.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My quick introduction, I'm Group Captain Augustine, fighter pilot, flew Mirage 2000, qualified flying instructor. I was the Director Air Defense till recently. In fact, even after Balakot, I retired and helping out with Automicro US. Quickly coming to what Sir talked about and we were talking about in the break as well. How do we counter this drones? Until now, we've been talking about drones and we are sitting in a drone festival. What is the need to counter these drones? So the challenges, what are the challenges? Let me give you a freeze frame picture. Most of you may or may not be aware of this freeze frame picture. Biggest threat today is not from the Aramco kind of rogue drones, which for last 8 minutes of its attack phase, I was fortunate enough to analyze this incident, give a report to my Assistant Chief, which went to NSA, which went to Riyadh. Then I went to Riyadh, sat in Air Force headquarters of Saudi Air Force and discussed this Aramco attack threadbare. So probably a little more than most of us sitting here am aware what has gone into the Aramco attack. Those attack, gentlemen, and I was discussing with the colonel as well, and ladies, are just 0.01% of the existing menace of drone. Being from a drone company, I am using this word menace and drone together. Pardon me, that is probably sacrilege in this, in this environment, but that is the problem. The problem needs to be understood, the challenge needs to be understood in its entirety. So Aramco is just 0.01%, then what is this rest of the 99 point something percent of the problem? So freeze frame which I was giving you is, I'll stick to my 5 minutes. So freeze frame I am giving you is, say, Srinagar. Many of the Srinagar bases, and it is a known fact, and nothing secret about it. Even today, those ubiquitous looking phantom drones are flying around. What do you do about them? धड़ल्ले से आते हैं, आपके पिक्चर लेते हैं, चले जाते हैं. One of the previous panelists also mentioned about it. The CISF panelist mentioned about it. What do you do about them? How do you counter them? And that constitutes about 99% of the problem. And where are we in terms of counter-drone applications today? Like the Colonel mentioned, we are at the nascent stage. So this has to be segmentized and attacked in its segment. So first segment is people who don't know that this is a no-fly zone and they fly, or they know but it is in a gray area, they still fly, and tomorrow when you get caught, they say, oh, I didn't know with the VIP 89 in this Delhi area, I'm not supposed to fly, sorry. So that is one segment. Second segment is that hail male category that previous panel was talking about, which come into, it happened, a couple of days ago. It went into Iran and killed the topmost general there. And it didn't escalate into a war. So employment of drone does not have an escalatory ladder feature, and that is why the drone is being used very effectively by Americans for past 2 decades. How do you counter that category? And the third category is the one which is completely electronically silent and is not even using your GPS to come and attack you. So that is the third category. And all the three categories has to be identified and attacked applying a different kind of technology. Where we are today, sad to say, where we are today is only to counter the first category, that is that ubiquitous phantom kind of drone, which is that 99%. Small, micro, innocuous, or probably can cause damage with very little payload. But for the second and the third category, we are way, way, way far away. That is addressing the predator class of drones which can come into your territory. Thankfully, our neighbor has not ventured into such kind of misadventure. And the third one is what happened in Aramco, and are we equipped for it? So as an industry, we need to look at it, and the industry will only look at it if there is a need felt and the government is ready to support the industry. And believe you me, no private player is going to put money into this field. He is not going to put money into this field unless he does not see any business case into this. So if there is no business case, who will hold hand? Who will work towards it? As company, we were working towards the first category. We have reached somewhere, but that is yet to be proven. And that is where most of us are. Maybe some Israeli companies will come and claim that, yes, we can shoot it down, etc. But that is all limited to 5 to 7 kilometers. The last and the most important thing is to separate wheat from chaff. So that is where my friend Guy is going to talk about how his company is bringing in, separating wheat from chaff, so that you tag the wheat and say he is wheat and not chaff, so that we identify the chaff and take out the chaff. So that is an area which our government is working quite hard towards. And thank you so much for the time.
Guy, I think you can take it on.
Yes, thank you very much. Good day, everybody. Glad to be in India, and thank you for the Drone Federation to give me the opportunity to share the experience of my company, Unifly, in what's happening in counter drone and what the specific product that we develop can contribute to drone counter-attacks. Now, maybe let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Guy. I'm trained as a physicist, computer scientist, and business administration. Have experience in a number of fields, including telecommunications, IT security, venture capital. Now, the company I'm working for currently, Unifly, is the market leader in UTM systems. Now, UTM systems are aviation control systems for drones. And it allows you a number of things, to do a number of things, but one important aspect is automate the validation flow. As there are probably a couple of operators here, you plan your flight and you want to submit it to the authorities, and the authorities evaluate the flight mainly based on risk, and there may be an automatic approval or a manual if the risk profile is too high. Now, what we have to remember here is that a UTM system knows which flights are approved. So they have a track of approved flights. So they know where drones have a permission to fly, at what time of day, etc. Now, another important functionality of a UTM system is during the flight, the air controllers can know in certain circumstances, I'll come back to that later, where drones are flying and where permitted drones are flying. And this is the wheat and the chaff that my colleague introduced just a second ago. So basically, allowed drones are known by air traffic controllers. To the contrary, a drone that is seen somewhere or noticed somewhere by the counter drone system and that is not known in the UTM system is most probably a malicious drone. So that is the wheat and chaff. Now, the question is, how do we know where these drones are flying? Well, actually, or what can we do to prevent the last stage, and what can we do to the other categories that are mentioned by my colleagues here, namely the people who fly their drone unknowingly or maybe knowingly and think they are in a gray zone. Who can we deter them from causing damage? Because it's not really the intention that counts. You may not have bad intentions and just do it for the fun of it, but in the end, when you force an airport to close down for half a day, you are causing tremendous damage. And also these things are things you want to avoid with counter-drone systems, which can be technological, but also other aspects. Now, to come to the point, next to our UTM platform, we developed two pieces of hardware. This is the small one, and it's basically an electronic number plate. It continuously emits the identity of the drone, the identity of the drone owner, and the position of the drone. So compare it a little bit to a license plate on a car. You can drive, you can do whatever you want, but you cannot do it anonymously. Now, where is this good for? Well, this is for the category of people who say, well, I'm in a gray zone, or maybe I know I cannot fly here, but I'm going to do it anyway. They do it now because they cannot be identified. With this piece of hardware, they can. Now, to take it one step further, we want to know where the drones who are permitted to fly somewhere, where these drones are, and this can be done with this device. And this device is actually comparable to this one, only it does a little bit more. All these parameters, the current position and the identity of the drone owner, are transmitted over a cellular network to the UTM system. So basically, it sends the current position almost real time to the UTM system. And this allows traffic controllers at any time, provided of course that such a drone is equipped with such a piece, such a tracker, it's a tracker device, to know at any moment in time where these drones are. That serves a couple of purposes, including safety, but also in the case of the detection of a potentially rogue drone, the counter-drone system can interrogate the UTM system, and the UTM system then says either, yes, I know this is a known drone and the drone has permission to fly here, or can say, no, this is unknown, and then it's up to the counter-drone system to go to the last step, as explained, and take action. So that was it, and even within time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Guy. Mr. Nagendra, I think, please take on.
So I'm Nagendra Babu. I'm an executive director at Unisting Tech Solutions Private Limited. I was earlier a scientist in DRDO. Our company is essentially working on building electronic warfare technologies. So we are as a company, a great advocator of design in India and make in India. So far, whatever has been delivered from the company has been indigenously in-house designed and developed. Looking at these problems and then the expertise that we have in the EW domain, we started building indigenous counter-drone systems. So this is about the, what we do. Now next, coming to the problem that we have, as this problem is, very, very nascent in the stage, and then we are trying to understand. What I would like to mention here in this platform is, as a country, what should we be doing in order to address this problem? I believe with the kind of expertise that we have and the kind of the state at which the problem is, we should be in a position to build the completely indigenous products for this. Either we or any other company in this country, at least to my knowledge, 10 to 15 companies are working in this direction. So we should be strongly advocating for building these systems indigenously and then promoting Indian industry. So this is what I strongly advise, because my experiences of getting involved in indigenized systems, the missile systems like Akash, it has made about 22,000 crores of business in India. Okay, so somebody has taken a bold step that, okay, we promote this, we buy these systems, and the entire Indian industry got immensely benefited out of this approach. So we need to do or adopt this approach even for addressing this solution. So because at the end of the day, after 5 years, 10 years, regretting saying that, okay, because these systems involve a lot of security, because you are trying to monitor everything that is happening around, and these are recording, and these are trying to understand the entire intelligence of what has been built. So now, can you just leave these systems to, or can we afford to go away with the implementation of the systems from outside? I'm not completely against this kind of approaches, but still, when there is a provision, we should be able to do that. If you see whether it is as a solution for this particular problem, the detection through passive means or detection through the active means, as a country, do we have the capability? My answer is yes, we have a lot of capability in the country in order to build these systems. If you see most of the radars being built, which are part of active detection today, most of them we have the capability indigenously to build them. So that's why when we are talking about the active systems, we will be able to do. Similarly, when we are talking about the passive systems, most of the systems have been already designed and then delivered at various stages on the other front. So the same can be adopted here with the kind of tweak that we want. So what we need to do is from the government, so whoever is here, I would like to request, and then probably should be in record in the report, saying that instead of looking at, see, when we wanted to do indigenous development, what should we do? We need to have an approach. Okay, so I can't, or we can't build the complete solution for this in one instance, because the problem is very complex. Okay. So when I say problem is very complex, what is the kind of border that we are talking about to guard from these systems, okay? And the kind of solution for each, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers costing 5-6 crores. So across the entire border, if you wanted to implement these systems, what's going to be the overall cost of this? So why should we start encouraging the Indian firms and then start making this product indigenously, looking at the scale at which this has to be deployed in future? So it gives the advantages like customization and then whatever the replacements that tomorrow we wanted, the maintainability of these systems. So all these advantages will be there with these products if we start doing them in-house. And then at the same time, we are going to product a lot of security elements into it and then ensure that nothing of this sort of information is going out. And as I'll just go back. So as a capability, so one is building these sensors. The second one is, what do we do as a country with a lot of deployment that already has been done in terms of watching various elements? So probably we must be putting drones to watch the border. We must have deployed a lot of other solutions which will be able to detect this. So we need to build some custom solutions around this already deployed infrastructure and then to be deployed infrastructure, so that we have an effective, a cost-effective solution that can come out of this particular approach. This is what we should be looking at when we wanted to solve this problem. So thank you.
Vishal, please.
Hi, I'm Vishal from Security Watch India. We basically hold conferences called Dronacharya for the last 2 years on drones and anti-drones, and I'm very glad that Drone Federation of India has also paid attention to this very important issue of anti-drones. We basically are here to talk about, after basically what happened in Saudi Aramco, what happened in Gatwick, what happened in Heathrow, recently happened in Singapore, yesterday by the US in the Iranian Mr. Soleimani was also attacked. So this trend of anti-drones is just increasing. And in India, our forces are also looking at it. We are having issues. Some airports must have had some issues. There's an issue in the LC. And there is solutions. Anti-drones solutions are there where it is portable, where it is mobile. There are different kind of jammers. We work with this, we're here to talk about this one company called as Tiny Red Dot. They're based out of Singapore, and they're basically an anti-drone manufacturer. They make jammers, and they've worked all around the ASEAN nations, and now we are helping them work in the Indian market, where they have anti-drone guns that's about barely 3 kilo weight, can jam any commercial drone, which is on 2.4 or 5.8 frequency, a kilometer away, and they have few other models, which is the Orion 9, which is like a man-pack, 13 kilos weight, can jam any drone. Maybe it's a handmade drone, which could be on 433 or 915 frequency, and a kilometer away or 2 kilometers away, even if it's flying on L1 or L2. So there are solutions like this in the market, which are portable and can be used by our forces. Second of all, I would like to talk on the detection part. There are a lot of RF detection companies around the world which are now focusing on India as a very important market. Aronia is there, D-Drone are there. All these companies are there in the Indian market now. And the thing is, the maximum you could see a drone, you could detect a drone about 5 kilometers away. That's what companies claim. There could be 10, 15, 20. What we've seen is about 5 kilometers away, you can see a drone. And maybe 3 kilometers down the line, you can bring it down, jam it, or send it back home. Because drones today, maybe it's like a DJI Phantom, which could have like an RDX or could have an IED. You wouldn't want it to land in your critical infrastructure. You'd like to send it back where it came from. And yes, we would also request all the startups over here, whoever is there, focus on this technology, focus on making RFs, focus on making jammers, focus on making radars, because India needs it. It's a huge market, and all of us together could help making it a safer place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank my panelists for sticking to time. That's great, guys. Due to paucity of time, I will not be opening the panel for questions, but we are available here. all of you who have questions, kindly approach each one member or collectively after the panel, and we'll be able to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Thank you.